Well, one of my favorite bits, is we tend to think that things in the old days, were purer than they are now, and in many cases that was true. But I got this whole piece where there was testimony in front of Parliament in England that showed that porter beer at the time, which is a forerunner of stout, dark ale, was at the time pumped full of drugs. Like they just put all these narcotics, into that beer because malt was expensive, but apparently the drugs were cheap. So people would get completely out of their heads on this beer that was in fact completely drugged. And it kind of reminds us of things like, the fact that Coca-Cola used to have cocaine in it. Well, in those days, people put a lot of things into stuff, that you might not expect. So it was some fascinating reading.
In terms of beer history with Chicago, Prohibition, obviously a big deal here. Al Capone rose to power and prominence. And then, of course, Milwaukee was a big beer producing region as well. But Chicago, I'm glad to see you taking a beer, by the way. Have a little sip. Chicago really is sort of important in terms of beer history in America, isn't it?
It was very important. I mean, all the major Midwestern cities, of course, Chicago primary among them, had huge numbers of brewery. They had huge German immigration that they were often, the brewers came from that German immigration, all the big names in American brewing. And also, so many millions of Germans who were hard-drinking people, who these breweries built their foundations on. Where I'm from, Brooklyn, had 48 breweries in 1900, and they made 10% of all the beer in the country. And Chicago has a similar history.
What do you think about just this rise the last 5-10 years in terms of interest in beer? In Chicago alone, I mean, we're sitting in the Map Room, which has an unbelievable, selection of beers. Places like the Publican have opened up recently. It just seems like more restaurants are they able to get the beers, or are there just beers more widely available?
It's everything. What we really have in craft beer is not a trend or a fad. What it actually is a return to normality. Remember, we were just saying about all these breweries that we used to have 4,000 breweries in the United States, and we made every kind of beer virtually in the world. And we had the most interesting food culture in the world because we had everybody from everywhere. And somehow in the 50s, 60s, 70s, we lost our food culture and we lost our beer culture with it. So in a way, craft beer is simply a return to normality. We're getting all the good stuff back. We're remembering things that we had forgotten, and enjoying our food and our drinks a lot more again.
I would be remiss if I did not ask you, what are you drinking here? Can you tell us what this is?
This is one of mine, which should be in your fridge at all times. This is a beer called Local One. This is broadly in the Belgian strong golden style. Re-fermented in the bottle like champagne, though in fact champagne got the technique from beer. So if it looks like a champagne bottle to you, in fact it's the opposite. Champagne is in a beer bottle. So I want people to remember that.
The book again is called The Oxford Companion to Beer. Garrett Oliver is the editor. Thanks so much.
Hey, thank you, sir.